Okay, so we've learned the basics of animation. With this, you can start from here, and then later on you learn more about the software. But you can learn animation, but if you don't know like the various principles underlying animation, the software will be useless. So let's look at the main principle underlying animation. So animation, yesterday we started discussing what animation is, if you remember, or if you were with us. All right, so animation is just about giving life to anything. It could be anything at all, right? One of the characteristics of living things is that they move, and it's one of the major characteristics. And animation is the process of giving life to anything else. Another definition of animation that I like so much is that animation is change over time. So the rate of change over a specific period of time. Change because not every time that you would have movement. Sometimes it's just in the color or in the shape. So, for example, if you are using a software and you gradually change from one color to the other, it's animation. And change in shapes, what we usually call morphing. You can change from one shape to the other, not necessarily moving from one place to the other. So I think in this circumstance, if we should use change, it's more suitable. So animation is change, forcing change over a specific period of time. And the amount of change and the length of time should be decided by, by the property of that movement you want to derive. So that's what animation is. Now to the history, animation has come a long way from the Americans' perspective. You know, Americans always have their history, how they develop things. But animation didn't just spring out from the Americas. Countries like the Asians also played a very significant role in the development of animation, in that they also have their form of animations, which is a bit not too different, but a bit different from the American form of animation. But the American ones is what's different. So there were people who played major roles in animation. We didn't bore you with that so much because we did that yesterday. So let's continue. We learned about the traditional 2D animation. So for the traditional animations, you can talk of the earlier ones, which are like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Mickey Mouse, the old Lion King. I'm not talking about the 3D new one they did. The old Lion King that came out not too long ago. So these are some of how a traditional animation will look like. You see, it's kind of flat, although you see shadows. You can have even a line animation like this. All right, then we have the rotoscope. So there are forms of the rotoscope animations. And with the rotoscope, you just trace the animation with the character. You act it out, you act all your actions out, and then you try to draw over it. So, like for this one, for example, as we see on our screens, the person acts it out, you trace it, the lines, and then you paint so that it will look animated. We use rotoscope whenever like we are doing very complex movements. Some of the movements are so complex that if you should sit down and draw from memory or from imagination, to take you a longer time. So we just place the images at the background. Then we have in our software, like what they used to do. But now we don't do that anymore. For like this one, for instance, they had the camera or light projecting the image onto the screen here. So, and then the artist can draw or trace the movements. And that's another form of animation you can do. Usually when you don't, your drawing skills is not that good, you can use rotoscoping for your animation. And then I mentioned the anime earlier. Anime is a form of animation that came from the Asian countries. So the Asians have their own form of animations. The difference between the anime and the American form of animation is that the American focus on movements a lot. They are in love, so much in love with movements. And the anime focuses on the effects and the background and the props and the other elements. So you see anime, their characters they have almost the same kind of eyes. They have a distinctive kind of face that they always use. And it's very distinct from the American form of animation. But now almost all of them are almost merging together now because of the advancement of technology. You can see a blend of other forms of animations. And then you have the stop motion. Okay, so with the stop motion, you have puppets being animated. And for the stop motion, there are so many types. An example of a stop motion animation that we watch is box throw. I believe you are familiar with these productions. You can see the way they look differently from other forms of animations. There's the 2D traditional that we mentioned earlier, and then the anime. So for the stop motion animations, you would have a puppet, then a camera, like this guy is doing over here. There's always puppets or papers or clay or even objects you can find in the house, your books, your chairs, your work materials, pencils, pen. You can do stop motion with almost everything. Like what he's doing here, you can use your phone nowadays to do stop motion. You just have to have something in the background you are shooting and then moving. As I said, you have to create the illusion of movement. So you take a picture, then you move the object, take a picture and you move an object. And then when you combine these pictures and play, you have an animation. So like this, there's a full set right here. But this, and this, they are all stop motion animations. This one is a legendary stop motion animation made back in the days. And so this one is also another form of stop motion animation. It's called claymation. You can change the shape of clay, move them a bit so that they form animation. And then there's a cutout stop motion animation too, like this one. So with this, just cuts the real shapes like the legs, the tail, the head, maybe the jaw, and then you place all of these cutouts on a screen like this, what we are seeing here. So you can see the various cutouts, and then you try to move them without putting them apart. You move them bit by bit so that you get your animation. Do I need a drawing skills to do animation? No. With all these forms of animation, you can tell that you don't really need to have a drawing skill to do animations. And then when you get to the actual process of animation, you see that there are so many things you can do in animation without necessarily having skills in drawing. So you don't need skills in drawing to do animation. And then we have the 3D computer animations. I think we are familiar with 3D computer animations a bit. For the 3D animations, you need a computer, and sometimes you don't even actually have to draw at all. That's when you are doing the animation. So in the 3D, you get the model like something like this, and then you place into the rigs. This is what we call the rig, the skeleton. This has to be in the model. So this is an example of a model. The rigs will be inside, and what you see outside here are the controls, what you click on to move the object. If you have enough time, you go over an 3D animation on Maya. But these are all, as I said, you saw Toy Story in a stop motion example, but it's actually a 3D animation, computer animation. This was done with a 3D computer animation, but it was made to feel like stop motion. And so with a 3D animation, you build the model like this, something like this, in the 3D software. You give it color and everything. You have to color it with the 3D software, and then you move it. with keyframes, what we call keyframes. So this is an example of a 2D animation, the Miro, the 2D form of Miro, and then the 3D form of Miro. I hope you can tell the difference. See, this one looks very flat. And then this one, but nowadays there are 2D techniques that are almost looking like 3D. And then there are 3D animations that the creators intentionally make it look like 2D based on how they choose to render that animation. The rendering is the process of just processing your computer work into a video. Just if you are familiar with any editing software or video editing software or even graphics editing software, then you should be familiar with the word rendering. Apart from these techniques, there are other forms, and I say still counting because there are other forms of techniques of animation that is coming up, like the um, motion capture animation. It's also another form of animation which is emerging. With that one, it's kind of like stop motion combined with 3D. So with the motion capture animation, they wear body controls. So instead of doing a frame by frame animation in a 3D, now they've developed suits, these ones, and with that, they don't need to keyframe everything like they are doing here. They wear it and they move. And when they move, their movement is transferred onto the rigs or the characters they created. So whatever you do, the character does. So an example is the making of the avatar. They use a lot of motion capture movements. The creatures were not real; they were 3D models, and then they were animated by the technique of motion capture. So there are softwares you can use. Now, if you don't even have the costume, you can just do this. Take a video of yourself, you send it to one of these websites who have developed AI, artificial intelligence, to capture movements. And then you pick your character, you send in your character, and then your character will copy your movement as in the you are doing in the video. So you don't actually need some of these costumes because they are very expensive. They are very, very expensive. But there's a way around it. You can use a video. You can take a video of yourself, upload it into some of the motion capture websites, and upload also your character, the character you made, and then your character will the movements will be transferred onto the character. But before all that, you have to reg your character, and there are ways to do that. Maybe that will go into details today. These are the forms of animation or the techniques of animation I can mention. There's all right, sorry, there's also the 2D cutout animation too. That one, there are softwares you can use like Moho. Moho doesn't do hand-drawn much. With that one, you will just have to cut out the design, like bit of the character, like you do in the cutout, and send into the 2D software. You reg it like you would reg it in the 3D. Then you can do 2D animation with rigging and keyframing. So you have joints, you have skeleton, but it's 2D. I hope you refer to some videos online to learn more about the 2D rig animation that Moho does. So how to begin? Software I showed you, earlier I told you that you need a graphic tablet like I'm using right here. But if you don't, there you can start with whatever. You can use a mouse to animate on the creator software that we are using. Right. So this animation that we did together, I showed you that I used the mouse. I didn't need the graphic tablet and the pen that I usually do. If I want to do more complex animations, I can use this. And also I can use this. But with this, I would have to like strain myself a bit because this one is not good for drawing. You can just use the shapes. So I taught you how to use the shapes for that kind of animation. So we pick the circle tool and then we use it to do this bouncing ball we are working with now. Right. So start with what you have. Don't wait till you get any fancy gadgets to start animation. You can even start animation with your phone. You can start with stop motion, as we saw in the references. You can start with stop motion. You can get a phone. You can get some objects in the house. Move it. If you watch here, I have this door at the far end. I don't know if you can see. There's a door at the far end by the lamppost. I can use that one for animation. I know how to use that one for animation, and it will look wonderful. So you can research into stop motion and use just your phone and an actual object to do your animation. And then joining other people in their works also will help you to build more skills. So you can volunteer and help other people. Maybe you hear of a project going on, like the one we are going to do in the group right now, the music video. You should join. Everybody should join that project. You volunteer just to learn the skill. Find out maybe what if you can't draw, maybe you can talk for the animation. You can do a whole lot of things. You can do coloring. You can do a whole lot of things for that project. And in that process, you learn a lot. And then finding easy projects online. There are projects, a lot of projects going on online. As you scroll through your social media, you can get access to someone's page, comment, and then work for free. As you are learning, as you are coming up, there are a lot of things you need to do for free, like what I'm doing now. It's for free, but I'm also gaining the skill of teaching also. So the more you do, the more you get. If you help someone to get what they want, they will also help you to get what you want. And not always for the money, but sometimes for skill. And then connect in social media, connect on other platforms. I initially asked you to create an IG account dedicated for animation so that you can show your works. But as you show your works, go around, see what other people are doing, and then learn from it. Build an online presence. Go online, work with people, ask them what they need, help them out in their projects. Comment on other people's posts. And then on social media, the more you communicate, the more you interact, the more people get to know you. And invest in your craft. Invest in animation. You can save money if you don't have this now. I got this for about 4,000 cedis for just for this screen, but there are cheaper ones you can get. You can get some for as low as 500, but you wouldn't get the screen with the display screen, but to be blank screen, and then you draw from your computer. So whatever marks you make, you see on your computer, and then you can animate with it. So invest in your craft, buy things that will help you, and then spend your time to learn. Also, you serve the internet. YouTube is a great platform that I picked a lot of from. Questions on what we've done so far. We talked about the forms of animation. We've talked about how to begin. I'm moving on to the field of animation. We're trying to talk about the field of animation. If you are entering animation, what should you expect? The landscape or the opportunities that are available in animation.